Welcome to the I Rock Knits podcast. My name is Corey Eichelberger, and I'm here today with my chocolate labradoodle, Cody, who's laying on the floor right over there, far enough away from the camera that we shouldn't have bumping issues until he gets up and wants to be under my feet. All over the internet as I Rock Knits on Etsy, Ravelry, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all the places. And I Rock, I-R-O-C, is just Corey, spelled backwards. Thanks for giving me a watch today. If you're new, welcome. I would love it if you would subscribe or at least give the podcast a thumbs up underneath the little bar there. That helps other people find the podcast. I do have an announcement today, but it's going to wait a little bit. It's hidden right over there. And I know some of you already know what it is. You've already guessed what it is. But we're going to get through most of the podcast here. What am I wearing? I am wearing my 12 days of knitting scarf, cowl, wrap. It can be knit a number of ways, but if you've got a set of mini skeins sitting around your house and you like doing or learning new little patterns, this one has multiple lace patterns. All fairly simple, but you just switch every time you do a mini skein. And this happens to be a pack from Leading Men Fiber Arts, so I did it in collaboration with them. And this one is not joined at the bottom, so when you get all done, you can graft them together or you can leave it open. This one is knit on a 16-inch circular in the round for the entire thing. I have another one right here. This is another colorway that they did, which is the turquoise and the oranges. So I was trying to decide which one to put on today. This one felt beachy, so I went with the one that has a little gray in it for those of you that are gray lovers out there. If you've been with the podcast long enough, you know that I'm not a gray lover. But you can make it as long as you want. You could make it a short cowl. You could make each section shorter. It's very kind of changeable. And it is available as a mystery knit along on Ravelry if you prefer to do it that way. So each of the clues is still out there as clue 1, clue 2, clue 3. But there's also a PDF for the entire pattern. So you just download whichever one you want. But if you kind of want to do it where you're not sure which lace section you're doing each day, you can certainly download those individual clues. I kind of left it out there like that. Okay, I read a couple of audiobooks this week. Oh, I have a couple of good ones for you. So the first one that I read is another Anthony Bourdain audiobook. It is medium raw. I did get it off of Libby, and the subtitle is A Bloody Valentine to the World of Food and People Who Cook. Now, this one was written after the Kitchen Confidential that I read previously, and I felt like in a few spots he apologized for some of the harsh criticism that he had given to fellow chefs and cooks. He didn't step it all the way back, but he kind of said, I really didn't mean to offend. You know, you're like that. Kind of, it was kind of a backwards apology a little bit. It was very good. It's 9 hours. It came out in 2010, so about 10 years after the previous one I read. It was another kind of fascinating look behind the scenes. This one had more to do with some of his private life and what was going on with him. I don't know why I'm kind of fascinated by him, but I am fascinated by lots of celebrities. I like to know their backstory. I like to know where they grew up, what high schools they went to, where they, how they started out, kind of how they made their rise. That kind of thing fascinates me. So I would recommend it. Some of you have chimed in already that you had read Kitchen Confidential years ago, and most of you said that you liked it. The other book that I listened to this week is The Rainbow Comes and Goes, A Mother and Son on Life, Love, and Loss by Anderson Cooper, narrated by Anderson Cooper and Gloria Vanderbilt, his mother. So I just said that I'm fascinated by celebrities or people who seem to live their, their life very public. And so when I saw this, I thought, oh, I wonder if it's going to be sad or if it, more of a looking back at our lives type of thing or not. And it was excellent. It's only 6 hours and 16 minutes on audio. They do a great job of narrating. It is actually emails and letters back and forth to one another, which they started when his mother turned 80, maybe? Can't remember. She passed away a year ago in June. So this book came out in 2016, and she would have been in her early 90s, I believe, when this actually was published. They lost her husband, their father, when the boys were quite young. I think Anderson was 10. And then his brother committed suicide when he was 12 or so. So Anderson had this kind of whole life of loss. He also was not wealthy growing up, as you might think. Gloria Vanderbilt had many husbands, and over the years she won and lost a fortune many times, built her own empire with the whole Vanderbilt jeans thing. She was an artist. She did home furnishings. So although she had a huge inheritance, that money was controlled by a nanny and auntie who fought for custody of her. So it is a fascinating story of how Gloria Vanderbilt grew up, what happened to her, how she was treated, why she became the woman that she was. And she has other children by another husband, but she and Anderson were never tight or close until in her later years. So if you like that kind of thing, there are several books have been written about Gloria Vanderbilt, none of which I have read. So now I'm trying to decide if this story told enough of her life, because it did go from the time she was born. Pretty much she was telling Anderson why things happened the way they happened. So you read a lot. If I really need to go back and read another biography or autobiography of her. But yeah, really good, fascinating. I finished it quite quickly. And then I went on to another one, which I'm really enjoying right now. It's a mystery, but not a crime mystery. It's a mystery. I don't know what's going to happen mystery. I don't know what's going on mystery. So we'll talk about that one next week. But I'm in the Ravelry group with your audiobook recommendations, or if you can't get on Ravelry right now, then just send them to me via Instagram or an email. I'm always available at Corey@iRockKnits.com. I have a recipe of the week this week, and I have a picture, I think, hopefully, that I kept to put in here. So we were looking for something easy to make, and I saw a recipe either online or in a magazine, I can't remember, for these barbecue roll-ups, kind of handheld barbecue buns with dough. And so I said to Ross, I'm buying all the ingredients and then you can make it. I'm still struggling a little bit with my hand. I have some swelling now going on, so maybe I'm overdoing it, but like I can't open a can or a jar very well and can't hold something to cut it. So he's like, yeah, no problem. He wants to learn. So we bought, it calls for a container of pizza dough. You could certainly make your own, but I wasn't going to push it with him. So I just bought the canister that you hid on the edge of the counter. And then we, instead of making, 8 individual little barbecue buns, we made one large one, again, for ease, but the recipe calls for individual ones. So you just make your barbecue with hamburger, or you could, use any meat of your choice. If you're vegetarian, you could use jackfruit. But we just used manwich, so we did not make the recipe in this. As you can see, this was kind of not really the recipe all the way through. But Ross likes manwich. We used to eat that back in the day. We don't have barbecues a lot So I was like, so he browned the hamburger and then put the manwich in, rolled out the pizza crust, put most of the mixture on one half of it. Then you take cheese sticks and you lay them in the roll up and you roll it up so that it's filled with a bit of cheese in the middle. So I bought Colby Jack cheese sticks and we laid them. He put two across all the way down, and then he rolled it as one giant log. And we put it in the oven for 10 or 12 minutes, and then we cut it like a roll up and served it on a plate with a fork, as opposed to, it was far more delicious than I ever expected. I don't know if I had just kind of thought, oh, this is not going to be that great, but I don't have to cook it. Okay, the dog has moved, but he's under my feet. I figured that would happen. You probably heard the heavy breathing. We were outside just before this throwing the frisbee in the backyard. And just a little bit of snow that we have left. I could do a little bit of a weather update mid-recipe for all of you here now that the dog is settled. This is what it looked like here last Wednesday. We had the biggest snowstorm. Biggest. In 140 years, we have not had snow this early or this much in October. And I would say that there are still vestiges of that snow on the grasses everywhere. And our leaves weren't down. Like usually we get snow in November, but our leaves are all down. We've had time to rake them up and, move on. And getting snow this early in October was just shocking and very depressing. We had several very dark days. So anyway, back to the recipe. The dog interruption. Sorry about that. It was a delicious dinner. I guess maybe I had forgotten what manwich tastes like. I'm sure there's sugar in it, so that's probably what kind of turned on my brain nerves. But yeah, it was really good. Highly recommend. Next time I'll make up barbecue myself and make probably my own pizza dough and roll them up. The thing about the recipe that I saw was that the kids could just pick them up and eat them, and then the cheese would be in the middle. It was just kind of kitschy and clever. So I'll put the recipe in the Ravelry group. If you need it, just let me know. If you can't get on Ravelry, you know the deal. You know the drill from here, right? If you can't do what you need to do, just get in touch whenever. I'm happy to help. Okay, I have a couple of podcasts that I kind of watched this week. I'm not spending a lot of time with my iPad. I have in the last couple of days watched some Netflix late at night because I've been trying to knit. But I watched Heather and Hops, and it's with Kat, K-A-T, who is a novice knitter but a crocheter. And on October 18th, she had her first episode up. So I caught her very early on. So you might want to go give that one a look because I might have got there before some of you found that one. And then last time I watched Show and Tell. So you have to put in knitting podcast because if you put in show and tell, tons of stuff comes up. But it's a knitting podcast and it's with Billie. And she is a knitter extraordinaire out of New York City who does vintage jewelry pairings with her knitwear. Very niche, right? But she's a character. I watched the beginnings of a couple of them just to kind of get a feel for who she was and what she was all about. And she's got all this, vintage jewelry that she pairs with these lovely things she's knit. So maybe take a look at that one too. It's just called Show and Tell. And then I have a correction, don't I always, from last time. Several of you were nice enough to reach out and tell me that when I was speaking about the podcast Tales from Cuckoo Land, I insinuated that the Lay family yarn was done by that family, but it isn't. They're having a fundraiser and they're using Lay family yarn as part of their fundraising. So I misspoke and probably didn't understand it in the moment because I didn't watch, 10 of her podcasts to understand the whole thing that she had going on there. I still really like her. I'm following her on Instagram now, and I think she's just really fun. This week, I listened to an audio podcast someone posted on Instagram that Minnesota Public Radio had, or I don't know if it was NPR, but anyway, it's called Minnesota Portraits, and it was on my Apple Podcast Audio app, and I listened to the one about the Aveda founder. Now, Aveda is a big hair salon, but it started here in Minnesota by this gentleman, Horst Rechelbacher, and it was kind of him talking about coming to Minneapolis and trying to start a business and what that was like, and it was fascinating. So now I'm going back to this Minnesota Portraits and looking up some of the other people that they've talked about, and when I'm driving around town, between books, I will often do some audio podcasts. Otherwise, if I'm in the car, which I'm in the car rarely, but frequently going back and forth to TRIA, my orthopedic center. I'll tell you more about that. So, and that it's quite a drive for me over there and back. So that's when I'm listening to podcasts. So I would recommend, if you are looking for kind of informative, interesting podcast, that Portraits might be one that you would want to look at. And then I saw a book list on Instagram. I talked a little while back about this Tender Land by Kent Krueger, which is a book I read for my book club in September. And it was about residential schools where we placed Indian children. And I have been trying to be more culturally aware, to get some more diversity in my feed, to learn more, to be more educated. You guys know that. Okay. So in Canada, they did a lot of this because the Indigenous people in Canada had as much strife as they did here in the US when the white settlers came through. And just kind of ravaged the land and took over and made deals with them, and they put a lot of the children into these residential homes. So there is a list out there by Sisters United MT of books about residential situations. So I just printed off the Instagram post. There was a high school and adult book one, and then there were some children's books. So I will put a link in the show notes to those lists if you're interested at all. I just want to read more. I want to find out more. And I don't know that, since I'm not going to the library, and a lot of us aren't going to the library, I'm sure you could Google the list and find it, but they reposted it. It was put out by Tipler Teaches. That's where they found the list on Instagram. And they were prepping for Orange Shirt Day, which is a thing in Canada where everyone wears orange on that day. So I'm just learning and thought I would pass that list along to anyone who might be interested in reading more about it. I did a post on Instagram. This is becoming the Instagram section. I did a post on Instagram where I asked, what you gonna knit this fall? Lots of folks having a hard time being or staying motivated to knit. And I get it, right? You sit down to knit and you think, I've got more time to knit now, but you're spending time sitting with the knitting in your lap. Does that ring true for any people? I came up with some ideas to get kind of that knitting mojo back. The first one, small, quick projects. Second one, fat yarn, big needles. The third one, bright colors. Fall palette. Find the oranges, the reds, the yellows. Do an event. Get a deadline. Pick something. You want to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool next spring. You want to go to Rhinebeck next fall. Pick a deadline. I'm going to do a mystery knit along. I'm going to do a knit along so that you have a deadline. Or knit a gift. That's another way to kind of get some of that mojo back. And then I came up with a few more ideas, so I added it. Watch a podcast. Listen to a fast-paced book. Watch a funny movie. Talk to a friend. Call someone you've been meaning to talk to and knit while you're on the phone. Limit your knitting time. Say only 10 minutes and then you have to walk away to go do something else. Timing how fast you can knit in 6 minutes. I used to do this with my students. We would time how many pages you could read in 6 minutes, and then you take that by the hour. So you do a multiplication and figure out how many pages you could read in an hour so that you know how long it's going to take you to knit something or to read a book, for students who had to finish a book so that they could take a test in 2 weeks, right? And they all think, I'm going to do it in the last 2 days, or they put it off to the last 2 days. So we do this little activity where you kind of figure out ahead of time, well, if I do 20 minutes a day, I'll finish in a month. So then you could say, I'm going to only knit 20 minutes a day. And then I'm going to stop knitting on that and knit on something else. And that can be really motivating. Sending up a prayer or holding someone in your thoughts. So those are just things that I thought of that you could do while knitting. And I will post those in the show notes as well. If you are struggling to knit, you could also share your thoughts in the comments about what is helping you to get some knitting done or kind of get your mojo back. I saw one more post from a knitwear designer, and I thought it was brilliant. She was talking about yarn selections for a project and helping people choose yarn to fit the project. And I'm going to do a whole segment on that because we need to talk. Some of you don't understand the concept of yards and grams. And that's so important, right? So next episode, I will talk about that more. But the one thing that she said in like a post in her stories was that the cheapest and most sustainable yarn you can use for any project is something you have in your stash. Make it work, right? If you're looking for less expensive alternatives to knit something, or you want to be more sustainable in your life and not do this, throwaway clothing that we have where we buy t-shirts and we wear them for a season and they fall apart and we throw them away and they go to the landfill. The most sustainable and cheapest way you can knit is to knit from your stash. And if you don't have yarn for a project in your stash, then go the other direction and find a project for your yarn, right? Just switch it around. You don't have to be knitting the hottest right now pattern that's out there. You can find something for these skeins right here. Go out and do a search on Ravelry and see what else other people are making, or spend some time on Etsy or Pinterest and get yourself some ideas for the yarn you have, and maybe bag it up and put the pattern with it so you have everything kind of already decided. I just thought that was brilliant that we're not using our stash, and most people do have a stash. Not everyone, but most people do have a stash. This is the Revontuli Shawl, which means Northern Lights. And this yarn was dyed to be a part of the Northern Lights selection. And it was dyed so that it would knit like this. Just fascinating. So this was Caterpillar Green yarn, which is now Gauge Dye Works yarn. And she did this several years ago, where she dyed yarn that when you started at the top and you worked your way down, the sections wouldn't get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier as the thing got wider, which is a miraculous feat of calculation, so that all of these are the same approximately the same width depending on your gauge. So if you weren't getting exact gauge, you know, they're a little bit different. But just I bought the yarn even though I'm not a gray person, and it really is kind of the Northern Lights. Can you guys see the bottom? So it does go all the way down to the bottom. I just wanted to see how she did it, right? I was just fascinated by that. But there are lots of yarns that you can use that have a long color repeat. That's what you're looking for, a long color repeat, or self-striping yarns. Things like Kauni, Kauni, Shoppelville, Lang yarns, Knit Picks Chroma. There are a whole bunch listed in the yarn ideas tab above this shawl on the pattern page. And so you don't have to necessarily use this particular yarn that I used, but it's a really simple shawl with chevrons, which I love. You guys know I love chevrons, and yarn overs. So easy to knit, but it shows off yarns, and you could certainly do this with leftover yarns that you have or scrap yarns, and just kind of make each section a mini and knit until it's the width that it needs to be, and then move on to the next color. So it's just basically I guess I would call it a shallow triangle. It's like it's not shallow in that it's not like this. I mean shallow in that it's more just like this. It was just a really fun knit. Now, I will say that the other company that makes beautiful long repeat color changing yarn is Twisted Fiber Arts. And they have yarns called Evolutions, which is just amazing that you can find shawl quantities that will do beautiful color gradiating. This is the yarn I used for my sugar maple tunic, where it gradiated all the way down and I didn't change the colors. It's expensive. I'm just going to put that out there. It's a treat. I think I said at the time it was my birthday, Christmas, and Mother's Day present from my husband that year. I just said, if you buy me this, you're going to be good for several holidays. But it's so worth it. The dyeing technique has to be so labor intensive to get that to work for shawls. So I just thought I should mention that this pattern is by AnneM, and I didn't know much about her. She's from southern Finland, and she used a yarn called Aade Long maybe. It has the not an umlaut, but a little squiggle over the O. Artistic 8/2, and I looked that up as well. But she's got beautiful shawls on her pattern page. And then while I was checking her out on Ravelry, she only has 4 or 5 patterns, but one of them was a Spiderman blanket. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Do you see it right there? It looks like Spiderman. If you guys have a grandchild and you have time for Christmas, I thought, wow, you know, there are some kids that are so into Spider-Man. And it looks like a spider web, and then it's got the red and blue. So AnneM, AnneM. This particular shawl came out in 2007. I didn't knit it till much later when I saw that the caterpillar green yarn had come out, and then she switched to Gauge Dye Works. And Catherine of Gauge Dye Works had some yarn on her Instagram feed this week, maybe, with that new custom shawls book that came out. It was with Kate Atherley and Indigo Dragon. Yeah, so that's a new book. I got a copy of it. I should probably show it. Here we go. It's announcement time. I have a new design out with Toad Hollow yarns. But this isn't it. Today, the Toad Hollow ladies, Mary Beth and Helen, will be showing you the Toad Hollow tunic in the Rumple colorway, which is the fairy tale selection for the month of November. It is a beautiful gold color. And they will actually have the tunic on their podcast today. I, on the other hand, have my version using their yarn of the tunic for you to all see today. So I'm super excited to show you. This is the first garment design that the Toad Hollow ladies have asked me to do for them. And so we started with the concept of Rumpelstiltskin being the colorway for November. And then I was talking to them a week ago and they said, hey, we're going to go live on Friday. And it's one of their birthdays. So they're not going to die that day, and they're going to put the podcast out and kind of a couple days early. They like to do sneak peeks. So I said, okay, let me scramble and figure out how to kind of make my podcast, my announcement, work with theirs. So I just delayed recording the podcast by a few days, and then this will just go live on Friday. Here is the inspiration picture that fit my design so well. So this is the miller's daughter from the story Rumpelstiltskin, who tricks him into telling, to finding out his name. And she's the one who gets locked in every night and is told to spin the straw into gold. But if you look closely, we've got this little V-neck here and this little over apron, an over dress. So I designed a Toad Hollow tunic. This has been the most challenging design I've ever done. And it's the simplest thing to knit. It's almost all stockinette and it's knit in Toad Hollow DK. Toad Hollow DK is a plump DK. It's almost a worsted weight. So if you need to swap out some yarn, you could hold fingering weight double. You could use heavy DK, but if you're in a lighter DK range, your yardage and your sizing is going to change a little bit. We're going to talk about that. But the features of the Toad Hollow tunic is that it's tunic length, but I wrote it for two lengths. So it can be hip length or it can be mid-thigh. So you can also have it where the bottom of it would be up in this range, something like that. And I did have a number of testers knit this. So if you go out to Ravelry, you're going to see all the different iterations, the different colors that my testers used, the different sizes they made. Hopefully they're all going to show them to you on a body. Some of them made them as gifts for family members, but I do have a couple of testers that wanted to do like the short version. A couple people shortened it a little bit. If you're short, you won't need to do the full length of the entire item. But the bottom starts with fisherman's rib, and it has a split hem, picture here. And you're working flat. So you do 10 rows of fisherman's rib flat, working back and forth, and then you make another matching piece. So you've got two pieces, and then you join them together on the side seams, where you're going to have about an inch or so of split, so that when you sit down in your tunic, you don't get that little pull right at that bottom seam, that it's up a little bit and there's a little two together there to give it a little stability. So, and I would say that that's the trickiest part of the whole pattern, is making two hems and joining them in the round. I mean, not too bad. Then that fisherman's rib stitch, 3 of those stitches run up the front and the back. So here are 3 fisherman's rib stitches, and 5 of those stitches run up the side. So on either side, you have 5 stitches running up the side here. When you get to the V-neck, then you split, and then you have a little bit, 3 stitches of fisherman's rib on either side of the V. And once you get to here, when you break for your underarm, it's super quick then. It is fully figured at the bottom of the tunic. It's a large circumference, lots of positive ease. I don't want it tight on your hips or your bum or your belly. I want it to kind of flow, and so it is. You can also stretch it to beyond the gauge a little bit if you want your bottom of your A-line to be even wider. There's a lot of give in this. See, lots of give. So, but I did knit the yarn at a tighter gauge. So because it's close to worsted, I want you to think of it as, you know, light worsted, or think of it as a worsted in your head for a minute. And I knit it on a size 5 needle at a tighter gauge. And a couple of people had to go down to a 4 if you're a loose knitter. And the reason that I did that is because then when you wash it and block it, as you're going to do, and your gauge swatch, it blooms a little, it grows a little, but I want that growth to be stopped so that when you get the weight of the item, it doesn't continue to stretch, right? I want you to be able to wear it and not have it be at your knees later on in the day. So that's why the tighter gauge. I would say that this is a positive ease garment, and if you're between sizes, go down. There are no sleeves and there's no neck. So it's open up here, very open, right? So you don't need this to fit. This one is my size, and it was knit by Kim because I can't knit it right now. And so I got the yarn from Toad Hollow, and then Kim knit the whole thing and shipped it over to me. So applause for her. She did a marvelous job. I didn't have enough yarn. I tried to get it out of 5 skeins, and then I had to get her another skein because she needed a little bit more at the top of the back. And now in hindsight, I could have had her make it a little shorter. I'm short, and I adjusted for that, but since I hadn't seen the prototype. So if you decide that you don't want it so short, your easiest solution is just to make this shorter, right? So as you're knitting up, because it's a bottom up construction, you can try it on and say, this is how long I want it. And then you can just 3 needle bind off your seams together. There are no picked up stitches when you're done with this. I know that's a bane for a lot of people. They have to pick up around the V-neck and pick up around the underarm. So I provided a bit of fisherman's rib around, and that should be enough. Turn it around, show you the back. So here's the back. You've got that long vertical line. And like I said, this one is quite lengthy. Let's talk about some of the issues that I had when designing this. I'm going to use my tale of designing the Toad Hollow tunic as my Corey stories this week because there's a story involved. Many have knit Kay Jones's Bits and Bobs blanket, and you will understand the concept that her fisherman's rib is not a true fisherman's rib. She's not doing a purl one below on the back side. She's doing a knit one below, and for all of the knitting. And I have knit one of those, and so when I cast on to do my hems at the bottom, I thought, I'm going to do my hems in just that easier fisherman's rib. And then I knit up quite a bit of and the side stitches weren't what I liked. I only had 3 on the side, and I was like, boy, I think it would be better if I had 5 on the side. So I fudged that and worked it out, and then I ripped it back and worked it back up again. And this was all in August when we were up north on vacation. And we came back from vacation early, so I continue to blame this, my lack of finishing on my husband. Not true. But we came back, and then the book was due and came out. And then I had hand surgery, and I had sent the pattern to my tech editor, and she came back to me and said, you know, you're not doing a true fisherman's rib here, and you either have to change it up or call it fisherman's rib. And I said, you know, the join didn't work that well for me in the other version, and so if you would fix that, I'd be appreciative. But I'm also recovering from surgery, so I wasn't in the best frame of mind to be making helpful decisions, saying things like, let's just knit two together. And she's like, I think it should be a purl two together. So we had quite a bit of confusion. And in the meantime, I need this to be test knit because it's coming out in October. And the testers were like, it's not working. And I'm like, sure, it should be working. And so then I had to kind of pull the pattern back, sit down with it and my tech editor and say, okay, we need to make this work. And I wrote it for 10 sizes and 2 lengths. And so there are lots of numbers in this pattern, lots and lots of numbers, different bust measurements and hip measurements, because you don't want a tunic that's too tight at the bottom. And the testers, many of the testers had to rip out and start over because of that kerfuffle that I did. And most of them hung in there with me and said, no problem, that's what test knitting's all about. We're gonna get it figured out for you. We're gonna help you out. I started out with 21 test knitters, 10 sizes, 2 test knitters each, trying to get someone to knit the short and someone to knit the long. But now we're in mid-September and the pattern needs to come out at the end of the month, and I need a sample knit, which my friend Stacy did, and she did the gold sample that was Heidi's size so that Amber could do the photography for me. And it needed to be shipped to Amber. Then Amber had to do the photography, send me the pictures so I could get them chosen and get them to my tech editor. And then we needed to style it. And I hadn't seen it completed because I never completed mine. And it was getting really tight. And I was super stressed. And I was yelling about the tunic on a daily basis, which is seriously ridiculous. But we're also in lockdown and short-tempered. I'm going to blame it. Can't we just blame it on the pandemic? So I reached out to the Toad Howl ladies and said, hey, it's not happening. You know, I didn't plan well enough. I thought I would have it fully knit in August. I didn't know I would run into the trouble that I had because it literally is a very easy pattern to knit. It's hard to write it in 10 sizes. But shouldn't have been a problem. And they were, gracious, and they said, no problem, let's put it out in November. So I should have asked 2 weeks earlier and not put my testers through that much stress. And then I was down to 18 testers because people just couldn't get it done. And if you're knitting the largest sizes, that's a lot of knitting, right? Like I think this one's a size 7, which is one size bigger than what I normally would wear, but I also wanted it as a sample so people could try it on. But there's size 8, 9, and 10. And the bottom of those tunics gets pretty big around. It's kind of like knitting a fuller skirt kind of on a dress. Even if you're knitting the short version, it's a lot of stitches. It A-lines up. But I also then thought, there's not everyone who goes from their hips to their waist to their bust, right? There are some people who go like this from their hips to their bust, and then they might go in a little underneath here. So let's add another length. Let's do one more thing to the tunic. Let's provide the option to knit the whole thing full and then just cinch it in right here. So it has more of an empire waistline, which will fit more people, but will make even more knitting. So we did that too. So one of the hardest parts about being a designer is kind of paring down your ideas into the best knittable solution of something. And sometimes I have more ideas than I should be working with at one time. And so I probably should have just said, hey, this is the way it's going to be. But I do think that it will fit some people better if they do that empire. So I had someone who said, yep, I'm going to knit that. That means that it's fuller all the way up. It's not getting smaller as you go around in an A-line shape. So there's a whole nother direction section in the pattern that makes it just do that right at that place. And so people were not going to be able to finish. And it required a bit more yarn for some people. And so I had 11 people finish, and I have about 5, maybe 4 or 5 who are still finishing, still working on it, and will finish in the next little while, and they will also post their pictures to Ravelry. The thing that you need from testers is the yardage amounts. You need to know that your yardage number, gauge per stitch, gram per stitch, amount per stitch, calculated is accurate so that people buy enough yarn, right? You want them to buy enough yarn so that they can do what they want. And I had one gal stripe her tunic in a rainbow, and it surprised me. I did not know. She had posted a picture on Instagram, kind of all folded up, and I liked the picture and moved on. It didn't even dawn on me. And the picture came through this week, and it was like, oh, someone knit a Corey color. Oh, go out and look at those. I am going to now read the names of the amazing testers who stuck with me, literally, and helped me fulfill a contract that I had committed to, but did not plan well for. All my fault. When I decided to write the book, I did not make the good decision to push back the tunic, which if I would have asked up front, they would have been fine with it. But I had committed to October. So I was like, it has to happen in October. And that's after September, and the book will be out. But both things needed to be happening at the same time, and they weren't. So test knitters were Beth Arner, Brianna Arthur, Valerie Arthur, Stacy Berard, Heather Columb, Emily Doyen, Adrienne Gallo, Kathy Green, Jean Gross, Kim Rudman, and Deb Vandermolen. Those are the people who finished, and I will add others to that list, but they get the biggest amount of applause from me. Several of them ripped back multiple times, emailed me hundreds of times saying, this stitch isn't working. This should be like this. This would be better if you could do this, over and over and over again. And that's what makes a tester, right? If you decide that you want to be a test knitter, you have to be a good ripper. Because when you find a mistake in the pattern for the designer, they don't want you to continue knitting. They got to fix it and go back. And usually it's been fixed beforehand, right? The designer has knit it multiple times. The tech editor has gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. So I just needed to really, really thank those people. It is essentially a pretty mindless knit. You put stitch markers at your side seams at the front and the back, so you're just stockinetting away, and then we get to those. So I made a little cheat sheet that you can set by you. Do you guys ever have those? That just to remind you of the couple of things that you need to do in that pattern. And I posted it on my Ravelry page. So for the project, so you can go in and just copy it and print it out. And it's just your little notes that when you're working flat, you do purl one, knit one below, purl one, or knit one, purl one, knit one below. And if you're working in the round, purl, and if you have 5 stitches or 3 stitches, and it just reminds you of what those stitches are. So as you're coming around, you can just look at that first stitch. If you can't read it, which you should be able to see what you did in the row below, but it just kind of keeps you on track. Kind of want to double check that. So I also put that in there. I'm just tickled that the Toad Hollow ladies continue to ask me to use their amazing yarns. Doesn't this look like Corey? It just screams Corey. I have this great fall shirt to put underneath it. you can purchase any of their DK weight yarn to make this tunic. You do not have to purchase the Rumpelstiltskin, but the gold is beautiful. It's a yellow gold. It's a brighter gold. It's not old gold, if you kind of can visualize that in your head. Since I don't have it and I'm only putting the pictures up on the screen for you to see, it's just super fun and lovely. So if you want to order that, they're going to be taking orders. You can always custom order from them. You can do any colorway, you know, of your choosing. They've got some beautiful colors that will be amazing. However, you will need to alternate skeins. Any of my testers who used indie dyed yarns, I kind of required them to alternate skeins. I just am not a huge fan of unplanned pooling and changing skein colors where it gets lighter and darker. You need to feather that in, you know, where you do one row of one row of the other, 2 rows of the old one, 2 rows of the new one, 3 rows of the old one, 1 row of the new one, 2, 3, 1, 2, like that. Just kind of feather it in if you're not going to alternate the whole way, so that you don't get a line across, unless you're striping, which then just go for the lines. So you can absolutely use I think any of their colorways. They're choosing colorways to cast on. The length is adjustable, the width is adjustable. You can make a short, sassy, kind of high hip version where it's kind of flowy around your body. It is absolutely meant to have something worn underneath it. This is not a kind of a vest or a tank top that you would wear without something. The armhole underneath the arm is, you know, hangs down a bit. You know, your bra would show, unless you hiked it up a bit. It wouldn't be something that you would wear. It's supposed to be a layering piece for fall, winter, and spring, so you could wear layers underneath it. I really hope that they do well with the design and they sell tons of their yarn. Those ladies work super hard. They've always got new stuff going. They're still podcasting every day. I really love their colorways. I tried to let their colorways sing by having it just be a stockinette piece. So if you are signed up for my newsletter, you will have received the coupon code to get the tunic at a discount for this weekend. So it will be on sale, and then the price will go up to. So I have officially been in the boot for my foot for a month, and I went to see the PA yesterday, and the foot is no better. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I'm really having trouble walking without anything on it at all. And so he said, yeah, I didn't think it would probably help. Okay. I jumped through that hoop for you. And so he said, you need to see the doctor, the surgeon, in 2 weeks. I really think that that's going to be the answer for you. And I said, the surgery is not an option. I can't do a foot surgery because I have a hand surgery scheduled, and this hand is not well enough to use a crutch. And this hand is already bad. So I would assume that if you do, I don't know anything about that. So I'm going to do an MRI in the next 2 weeks so that I can see the doctor and see what he has to say. I know that this can take a long time to heal. I've heard that it can take up to a year to heal. My frustration is just really coming from the point of not being able to exercise at all and eating during a pandemic. I'm just home all day. I'm just snacking. And even when I say, you know, I'm not going to have, you know, a snack today and I go all day, I still just feel like I'm eating more and during my meals and then not exercising any of it. You know, I've always been okay in my adult life with being a little heavy. it is what it is. It is who I am. But it's not good for my knees to get heavier and heavier and heavier, right? Like I cannot continue on this path and just be like, well, now I'm that person who just eats all day and sits in the recliner and doesn't walk her dog. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And I found some exercise that I love, doing this line dancing. I want to get back to it. So many of you have reached out, given me lots of suggestions and helpful hints. I'm doing it all. I went to the chiropractor twice. I'm using the TENS unit on my foot. I have one at home. I'm putting that on all the time. I'm icing. I'm stretching. I did not stretching for the last month. I'm wearing the boot to bed. I'm not going without shoes. I've done the physical therapy. I went to a stretch clinic last Thursday. It's called Stretch Lab. Just opened here in Minnesota. They have 3 sites, and they were trying to open during a pandemic. They had free trials. You could go in, you wore a mask, and your person wore a mask, and they stretch you, and they help you work on, just stretching your body. So it's similar to massage, but they're not massaging. They're just doing all the stretches where it's passive, and then you tighten up and then you stretch again, which I've done. I did a lot of that when I was a gymnast, and so I went and tried that for my foot and my leg. My calf is really tight, but my foot is not. I'm like hypermobile, which is, a thing. The health update. I'm just going to try to keep it compact, even though I talk a lot. Let's do the hellos today. Finish up the podcast, shall we? A lot of you liked my comments last time around say it aloud, and me telling Kylie that if you don't tell people and you don't name things to people, they don't know sometimes, and sometimes they know, but they get a little shocked by hearing it aloud. The comment you just made bothered me, and so I'm assuming that it might bother other people too. Let's not make comments like that. You just say it. You're not mean, you're not aggressive, you're not angry, you just state the problem, And Mom, when you try to fix it for me, I get frustrated, and so I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen, and then I'm going to be better and I'm going to walk away. That's one of the most common ones we have. If she's calling at a weird time and she's upset, the first sentence needs to be, I'm okay, but. Tell the mom you're okay, that you're just upset about something, and then also, I don't need you to fix this for me. I just need you to listen. Okay. Parameters. Like, set it out there for me. This week was, will you please talk about something? Because I'm so ticked off at what happened this afternoon, and I'm dwelling, and I just need someone to get it off my mind. So I just started chatterboxing. I told her about my day, everything we'd been doing, what her dad was doing, what I was doing. And then I took a breath and I'm like, am I doing okay? And she's like, much better. Like, I just need to think about something else. But I feel like we can do that with husbands and loved ones and coworkers. You just name it. There are lots of terms you can call it. Managing expectations, naming the problem, saying it out loud, however you want to call it. But I just think it can really help with communication. Like, Ross, I don't want you to try to give me solutions for this. I'm capable of fixing it. I just need to vent for a minute. That's how we communicate now, is we try to tell the person the type of response we're looking for in the moment. Would you just feel really sorry for me right now because this tunic pattern is not going well? There's nothing you can do about it, and I'm going to work it out, but I just need to vent. That kind of thing. Okay, I'm rambling again. Oh, you guys. 119 comments we had back and forth this week. Rachel Weisenstein, Downriver Knitter, Mary B., Danielle Brown in Kentucky, Heather Wilson, Deb Vandermolen. Deb lifted me up this morning in an email, and she has something going on in her life right now that's bigger than anything I have going on. So will you all hold Deb in your thoughts today? Eventual Knits Leah, you need to go watch her podcast if you haven't. She's a Minnesotan, so we're together. Luana Hendricks, Patty Skaggs, Terry Monk, Ilva Landrum. Hi, Ilva. Ilva was in my knitting group, and I haven't seen her in way over a year, maybe even longer. Kathy B., Suzanne Selby, Peggy Bork, Maggie Two Sticks, Rachel in Seattle, Amy Weimer, Carrie Onstead, Walter W., Cindy Ehlers, Angela Jenkins, Valerie Arthur, Cindy Ehlers, Pat Howes, Heel to Palm, Laura Lenke, Jessie's Mom 12, Kat Montgomery, Mashila, Emily Seth. I want to look up how to say that. Emily S. Margarita Deverson, Penny, Jess Conrad, Rachel Dobson, Robin Gasser, Candy Harris, Brandy Stoker, Astrid Erminus, Meg Carr, Olivia Mankey, Kelly Mathern, Victoria Pileski, Carol Morrison, Mindy Asplin, Emily Doyle, Christine Carr, Kathy Goodman, Pat Wagner, Melinda Zaccardi Rousseau, Cindy Bukite, Mary Case, Janet Robertson, Michelle Knit Takes Two, Stacy B., Jerry Brown, Kathy in Montana, Little Kitten, Amy Mickelson, and Mob Buchan 818. Thank you so much for commenting. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I had 4,000 subscribers, and then I went back down, and then went back up, and then I went back down, and now I'm up to 4.1 K it says on it or whatever. So it did fluctuate there for a couple of days as people unsubscribe and resubscribe to things on YouTube. But anyway, it was kind of a big milestone to make it, and I really appreciate all of you who continue to come back and listen to me blather for far too long. I really hope you like the tunic. I hope that it fits a lot of people's style. It was a huge project to get done in all those sizes and to fit all those bodies, and to have everyone come out saying, wow, it actually turned out. I think that was the biggest email I got, was from someone like, you know what, I really like this. Like, shocker, it was such a mess at the beginning, and now it's kind of fun, and I learned how to do a little tiny bit of fisherman's rib, and that was kind of fun. And yes, absolutely. I know when have someone ask, can you do regular ribbing at the bottom? Sure. Right? If you don't want to learn fisherman's rib or don't want to do it, the testers have to do it. So, but I hope you love their colorway. I just hope that, we can support them and one another through this mess of a year. One little last thing. I got an email from Jane Taylor, the librarian in South Dakota, who I met and spoke for when the Minnesota 52 book came out, and she was on TV this week, and she wore the Knitting at the Library cowl. So how awesome is that, Jane? Keloland TV. I grew up in Keloland. And she was on a book club where they were discussing a book on the news, kind of sharing books. And how perfect that she wore the Knitting at the Library cowl, and she's a librarian, and she was talking about books on the news. So I just thought that was great. I wanted to share it with all of you. Okay. Cody's anxious because the dogs down the street are outside playing in the front yard, and boy, would he like to go join them. Until next week, waddle on, no green bananas. Keep it colorful. Don't complain with your mouth full. You'll never regret ripping back, and keep your fork. Bye. Love you all.